Welcome to Untold Stories. I'm James, a first lieutenant in the Army, and today you're about to hear a story you won't find in any training manual. They called her just a girl with a gun. No one paid attention, no one believed in her. She was just a logistics worker, quiet, nearly invisible to the battle-hardened soldiers around her. But then, she stepped up, raised a Barrett .50 and pulled off a shot so unbelievable even the SEAL veterans were left speechless. This isn't just a story about a bullet. It's a lesson in belief, courage, and how the quietest among us can rewrite history. The range fell silent as Eleanor Voss took the rifle. No one expected much. She was just the target technician, invisible, forgettable. The SEALs watched with smirks as she adjusted the scope. No gestures of anxiety, no hesitation in her movements. When she fired, the sound echoed across the desert. For 3 long seconds, nothing happened. Then the impossible. The target rang true at 3,400 m away. As she handed back the rifle at 50, not a word was spoken, but everything had changed. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer just the rookie, and they all suddenly wondered who she really was. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoyed this story and want to see more like it, consider subscribing. Your support helps us continue bringing these untold stories to life. The Nevada sun beat down mercilessly as Eleanor Voss moved among the firing stations, collecting spent casings and adjusting target mechanisms. Her movements were efficient but unremarkable, designed to attract minimal attention. Loose-fitting khakis and a faded service shirt concealed her athletic frame, her auburn hair tucked tightly beneath a standard-issue cap that shadowed her features. At 28, Eleanor had mastered the art of being invisible. "Target in lane 6 is tilting again," barked Lieutenant Commander Roland Hale, not bothering to look at her directly. "Fix it before the next rotation." "Yes, sir," she responded, voice deliberately neutral. This remote training facility nestled in Nevada's desert basin housed some of the military's elite Navy SEALs preparing for deployment. Today was long-distance qualification day, and tension ran high among the shooters. Difficult conditions with high winds, heat mirage, and pressure from commanding officers had turned the atmosphere brittle. Eleanor moved to lane 6, tools in hand. As she worked, she couldn't help noticing the environmental factors affecting today's shoot. The wind at the firing line moved differently than the flags indicated further downrange. The mirage effect was creating a particular distortion pattern she recognized instantly. These observations came naturally to her, calculations forming unbidden in her mind. 14 minutes left, gentlemen, Roland called out. "Gideon Blake, you're up next." Chief Petty Officer Gideon Blake strode to the firing position. Known as the team's best marksman, he carried himself with the cocky assurance of someone who rarely missed. The other SEALs gathered behind him, ready to witness another impressive display. Eleanor stepped back, clipboard in hand, tasked with recording results. She kept her eyes down, but couldn't help making mental adjustments to Gideon's setup as he prepared for his shot. His first attempt at the 2,000-meter target missed right. Wind kicked up, he muttered, making an adjustment. His second shot missed left. Frustration rippled through the group. Eleanor noticed Gideon's breathing pattern changing, his composure slipping. She made a small note in her logbook. His third shot missed. "God damn it," Gideon slammed his hand against the bench. "Having an off day, Chief?" Someone joked nervously. Gideon's eyes narrowed as he caught sight of Eleanor writing in her notebook. "Something to say, target girl?" he called out, voice sharp with humiliation. The range went quiet. Eleanor froze, pen hovering above paper. "No, sir. Just recording the results." "Really?" Gideon stood, stalking toward her. "Because it looks to me like you're critiquing my shooting." "Knock it off, Gideon," Commander Roland interjected, though without much conviction. Gideon ignored him, stopping directly in front of Eleanor. She could smell gun oil and sweat. "Since you're taking notes on my technique," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "why don't you show us how it's done?" A few SEALs chuckled uncomfortably. "That's not necessary, sir," Eleanor said quietly. "I insist." Gideon held out his Barrett .50 caliber rifle. The 3,400-meter target, one shot. Commander Roland stepped forward. Chief, this is inappropriate. What's inappropriate is having civilians judging operators without knowing what the heck they're looking at. Gideon cut in. His eyes never left Eleanor. So, target girl, put up or shut up. The challenge hung in the desert air. Every eye turned to Eleanor, most expecting her to decline and retreat into humiliation. Instead, after a moment's hesitation, she set down her clipboard and reached for the rifle. Something shifted in her demeanor, subtle but unmistakable. Her hands took the weapon with practiced ease, checking the chamber and controls in a smooth, professional sequence that made several of the operators exchange glances. Master Chief Wilhelm Adler, the oldest team member, stepped forward slightly, his weathered face creasing with concentration as he watched Eleanor adjust the scope with quick, precise movements. His eyes narrowed when she did so without referencing wind charts or range tables. As Eleanor moved to the firing position, the atmosphere changed. What had begun as mockery transformed into uncomfortable curiosity. She assumed a perfect prone position, her breathing immediately falling into the controlled rhythm familiar to any trained sniper. Gideon crossed his arms, a smirk playing across his face. "Any time now, rookie." Eleanor didn't respond. Her focus had narrowed to the task. As she peered through the scope, old muscle memory took over. The years of pretending, of hiding, of being invisible, all of it fell away. In that moment, she was her father's daughter once more. Complete silence fell over the range. Even the desert wind seemed to hold its breath. Eleanor's finger rested lightly against the trigger as she made her final calculations. At 3,400 m, well beyond the effective range most snipers trained for, every variable became critical. The Earth's rotation, the barrel temperature, the mirage effect created by heat waves. Her mind processed it all instinctively, the way a concert pianist doesn't think about individual notes. She exhaled slowly, controlled, and squeezed the trigger between heartbeats. The Barrett roared, its massive recoil absorbed perfectly by Eleanor's stance. She didn't flinch. Seconds stretched as the round traveled the immense distance. No one moved, no one spoke. Then, faintly in the distance, the unmistakable ring of a direct hit. "No freaking way," someone whispered. The spotters frantically checked their scopes. "Center mass," one called out, disbelief evident in his voice. "Direct bullseye at 3,400 m." The SEALs erupted in shocked exclamations. Several rushed to verify the hit themselves. Gideon stood frozen, the smirk wiped clean from his face. Eleanor rose smoothly from her position. Without ceremony, she handed the Barrett back to Gideon, their eyes meeting briefly. She offered no smile, no explanation, no gloating remark. She simply turned and walked away, resuming her duties as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Behind her, the chaos of voices grew. "Did you see that? Impossible shot. Who is she?" Commander Roland watched her with new eyes, reassessing everything he thought he knew about the quiet range technician. Master Chief Wilhelm moved away from the group, pulling out his phone. His fingers trembled slightly as he dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Sir," he said quietly when the line connected, "I think we found Spectre's daughter." Later that evening, Eleanor returned to her sparse quarters on base, a simple room with minimal personal effects. Years of living under the radar had taught her to travel light, to leave nothing that could trigger recognition. She sat on her bed, finally allowing her hands to shake. The moment the rifle had settled against her shoulder, muscle memory had taken over. 8 years of training with her father, the man the military had named Spectre for his ability to hit targets no one else could see, had embedded skills she could never truly erase. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door to find Master Chief Wilhelm standing beside a trim man in civilian clothes. The stranger wore an unremarkable suit, but his posture and alert eyes marked him as military. "Miss Voss," Wilhelm said, his voice gentler than she'd ever heard it. "May we come in?" Eleanor hesitated, then stepped aside. "Or should I say," Wilhelm continued once the door closed, "Lieutenant Voss." The calm facade Eleanor had maintained all day finally cracked. Her shoulders sagged as the weight of recognition settled upon them. "How long have you known?" she asked. I suspected since I saw you handle that rifle, Wilhelm replied. But I wasn't certain until I made a call. The civilian stepped forward. My name is Matthias Crawford. Your father was my commanding officer. Spectre saved my life in Kandahar. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly, the first real emotion she'd shown all day. Then you know what happened to him? Matthias and Wilhelm exchanged glances. Not exactly, Matthias admitted. But we know he didn't betray his country despite what the official record states. Eleanor's jaw tightened. He was set up. Operation Nightfall was compromised before it began. That's what we believe too, Matthias nodded. Is that why you've been moving from base to base, looking for information? I've been tracking the men who were there that night, Eleanor confirmed. The ones who survived. The ones who lied. Master Chief Wilhelm studied her with new understanding. That shot today. No one's made that distance consistently since your father. He was the best, Eleanor said simply. And he taught you everything he knew, Matthias added. It wasn't a question. Eleanor moved to her small closet, pulling out a weathered metal box from beneath a stack of uniforms. She unlocked it and removed a folded paper. This was the last thing he gave me before he disappeared. She handed it to Matthias. Coordinates, names, details about Nightfall that never made the official report. Matthias studied the paper, his expression grave. This changes everything. There's more, Eleanor said. But first, I need to know what happens now. You found me. What are you going to do about it? That depends, Matthias replied, on whether you're willing to finish what your father started. The morning sun cast long shadows across the range as Eleanor approached. This time she walked differently, spine straight, eyes forward, purpose in her stride. Gone was the deliberate invisibility she had cultivated for years. The SEAL team was already assembled, equipment laid out for the day's training. As she neared, conversations halted. All eyes turned toward her. She wore the same range technician uniform, but now a lieutenant's bars gleamed on her collar, her true rank restored overnight through Matthias's intervention. Gideon stepped forward first, his expression unreadable. For a moment, tension crackled between them. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. Lieutenant, he said, offering a respectful nod. Eleanor accepted the handshake. Chief. Commander Roland approached next, standing formally at attention. Welcome to the team, Voss. Officially this time. Thank you, sir, she replied. The formality broke as other team members gathered around. Questions tumbling out. Where did you learn to shoot like that? Are you really Spectre's daughter? Is it true you qualified expert at 16? Master Chief Wilhelm quieted them with a raised hand. Save it for later. We've got work to do. He led them to a briefing area where Matthias waited with several intelligence officers. Maps and satellite images covered the tables. A high-resolution photograph showed a compound nestled in mountainous terrain. 3 days ago, Matthias began, we intercepted communications confirming the location of Victor Stahl, the arms dealer responsible for supplying the terrorists who attacked the embassy in Karachi last month. Images appeared on the screen, surveillance photos, intelligence reports. His compound is heavily fortified, surrounded by mountains. The only approach would trigger sensors and alert his security team. Matthias pointed to a distant ridgeline. The only viable position for a sniper is here, 3,800 m from the target. A murmur ran through the team. 3,800 m. Beyond even the extraordinary shot Eleanor had made yesterday. Impossible, someone muttered. Not for everyone, Matthias replied, his eyes finding Eleanor's. Wilhelm stepped forward, carrying a long custom case. He placed it on the table before Eleanor. This arrived by special courier this morning, he said quietly. Eleanor opened the case slowly. Inside lay a custom Macmillan TSC-338 sniper rifle, her father's weapon of choice. She ran her fingers along the familiar contours, throat tightening with emotion. A photograph had been tucked into the case's lining. Eleanor carefully removed it, a faded image of herself at 16, standing beside her father at their private range in Montana. On the back, written in his distinctive script, to Eleanor, the best shot I've ever seen. She closed her eyes briefly, composing herself. When she looked up, The entire team was watching her. Stahl isn't just an arms dealer, she said, her voice steady. He was the contact who compromised Operation Nightfall. He's the reason my father was labeled a traitor. How do you know that? Roland asked. Because my father left me a trail to follow, Eleanor replied. Names, locations, evidence. I've spent 5 years piecing it together.
Matthias nodded.
Lieutenant Voss has provided intelligence that changes our understanding of what happened that night. The mission isn't just about eliminating a threat. It's about clearing Spectre's name. 3,800 M, Gideon said, shaking his head. Even with perfect conditions. I'll make the shot, Eleanor stated simply. Not boastful, not defensive, just fact. Master Chief Wilhelm smiled for the first time. I believe you will. The briefing continued for another hour, operational details flowing seamlessly as the team absorbed their roles. The mission would commence in 48 hours. For now, they would prepare. Voss, Commander Roland called as the briefing concluded. A moment. Eleanor approached him, standing at attention. Sir, 5 years undercover, moving base to base collecting intelligence, he said quietly. That takes more than skill. Takes determination. My father didn't betray his country, sir. I knew him, not well, but we crossed paths. Roland studied her face. You have his eyes. Same intensity. He hesitated, then continued. The rumors after nightfall were ugly. Few stood by him. I should have asked more questions. You weren't alone, sir. No, but that doesn't excuse it. He handed her a folder. These are the operational parameters for tomorrow's qualification shoot. I expect you to outperform everyone. Yes, sir. As she turned to leave, he added, Lieutenant, welcome back to the service. The afternoon sun blazed across the range as Eleanor settled behind her father's rifle. She had spent the morning reacquainting herself with its nuances, making minute adjustments to suit her preferences. Now, with the team watching from a distance, she prepared to demonstrate her capabilities. The targets ranged from 1,000 to 3,000 m, standard qualifications for elite snipers. She worked through them methodically, each shot finding its mark with uncanny precision. The SEALs watched in professional silence, occasionally exchanging glances as she repeatedly hit targets most of them struggled with. Master Chief Wilhelm observed from nearby, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Final target, the range officer called, 3,200 m. Eleanor adjusted her position slightly. The wind had shifted, blowing steadier now, but with occasional gusts. She waited, patient, reading the conditions. When she fired, there was no hesitation, no doubt in the movement. The bullet found center mass. Qualification complete, the range officer announced. Perfect score. As Eleanor rose, she noticed Gideon watching her intently. She approached him directly. Something on your mind, Chief? He didn't flinch from her gaze. Just wondering where you've been hiding all this time. In plain sight. It's remarkable how invisible someone becomes when others decide not to see them. Gideon absorbed this, then nodded. Fair point. He hesitated before adding, that 3,400-meter shot yesterday. I've never seen anything like it. My father once hit at 3,900. That's not possible. I was there, Eleanor said simply. Weather conditions, perfect, custom ammunition. He did it twice in succession. And he taught you everything. Almost everything. That evening, Eleanor found herself alone in the armory, fine-tuning her equipment for the coming mission. The familiar routine of checking each component, each mechanism, brought back memories of nights spent with her father, learning the artistry behind the science of precision shooting. Never rush the preparation, he would say. The target is only as good as the foundation. The door opened behind her. Matthias entered, carrying additional supplies. I thought you might need these, he said, setting down a case of specialized ammunition. Custom loads adjusted for the specific conditions we'll face. Thank you. Eleanor examined one round, noting its craftsmanship. Matthias watched her work for a moment. Your father and I served together for 7 years before nightfall. You were his spotter? Yes. How did you know? He mentioned you. Said you had the steadiest hands he'd ever seen in high-stress situations.
Matthias smiled faintly.
That was generous of him. The smile faded. What happened after nightfall was wrong, Eleanor. The evidence was manipulated. Key testimonies altered or buried. By whom? That's what we couldn't determine. Someone high up wanted the operation to fail and your father to take the blame. And tomorrow we get closer to finding out who. If we can capture Stahl alive. Yes.
Matthias hesitated.
There's something else you should know. The intelligence suggesting your father might still be alive. It came from Stahl's compound. Eleanor's hands stilled over her rifle. What exactly did it say? A communication intercept mentioned the ghost in the mountains being moved to a new location after questioning. It's thin, but the timing and phrasing match previous code references to Spectre. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Because I didn't want it to affect your focus on the mission. If there's even a chance he's alive, we need to secure Stahl. Eleanor nodded slowly. I understand. Can you maintain objectivity? She met his gaze steadily. I've waited 5 years for answers. I can wait another day. Dawn broke cold and clear over the mountain range bordering Stahl's compound. The team had inserted during the night, each member moving into position with practiced stealth. Eleanor and Matthias had separated from the main group, making the arduous climb to the sniper position. Identified during planning. The ridgeline offered a direct line of sight to the compound's main building, though at an extreme distance. As the sun rose, Eleanor settled behind her rifle, Matthias beside her with a high-powered spotting scope. Wind at 3 miles per hour west to east, Matthias murmured. Temperature rising, minimal mirage effect. Eleanor made minor adjustments to her scope. Chronograph reading 3,273 feet per second, consistent with expected performance at this altitude. They fell into a rhythm established by years of training, though not with each other. The language of sniper and spotter was universal among professionals. Through the scope, Eleanor watched the compound stirring to life. Guards changing shifts, personnel moving between buildings. Target building in sight, she reported. No visual on primary yet. Their earpieces crackled. Alpha team in position, came Commander Roland's voice. Bravo team ready, awaiting the shot. The plan was precise. Eleanor would eliminate Stahl's head of security with her first shot. The sound would take several seconds to reach the compound, giving her time for a second shot at the communications array. In the confusion that followed, Alpha and Bravo teams would breach the compound's perimeter with the primary goal of capturing Stahl alive. Movement at the south entrance, Matthias reported. Matching height and build of Target 1. Eleanor adjusted her focus. Through the scope, she could make out a tall figure in tactical gear giving instructions to a group of guards. Confirm Target 1, she said calmly. Head of security. Range 3,782 m. Matthias noted. Wind holding steady. Eleanor drew a slow breath, settling deeper into position. Every variable calculated, every factor accounted for. In her mind, she heard her father's voice guiding her through the process as he had hundreds of times before. Send it when ready, Matthias said quietly. She exhaled halfway, paused, and squeezed the trigger with smooth, even pressure. The rifle's report echoed off the mountains. Through the scope, Eleanor watched the target continue speaking for nearly 3 seconds before suddenly collapsing. Without waiting for confirmation, she shifted aim to the communications array visible on the compound's roof and fired again. The delicate equipment exploded in a shower of components. Both hits confirmed, Matthias reported, amazement in his voice despite his professional demeanor. Alpha, Bravo, you are clear to proceed. The radio came alive with tactical communications as the teams began their assault. From their elevated position, Eleanor and Matthias watched the methodical breach unfold below. The teams moved with precision, neutralizing resistance without fatal force when possible. We have a situation, came Roland's voice 15 minutes later. Primary target is barricaded in the lower level with a hostage. Eleanor tensed. Details on the hostage. Male, approximately 60 years old, appears to have been held for an extended period. Malnourished but alive. Matthias's eyes met Eleanor's, the unspoken question hanging between them. Can you get visual confirmation? Eleanor asked, keeping her voice steady. Negative. They're in a reinforced room with one small window. Angle is wrong from our position. Send the building schematics to our tablet, Matthias instructed. When the files arrived, he studied them intently. There's a ventilation shaft that runs above that room. It has a grate that would provide limited visibility from above. Can anyone access it? Eleanor asked. Too narrow for tactical gear, Roland replied. We'd have to strip down, and even then it's tight. Eleanor made a decision. Hold position. I'm coming down. Matthias stared at her. Eleanor, that's not the plan. Plans change. She was already packing her equipment. If that hostage is my father, I need to know. And if Stahl is using him as leverage, I might be the only one who can change the equation. The descent from the ridgeline was treacherous, but Eleanor moved with practiced efficiency. Matthias followed, his expression tight with concern. The sound of sporadic gunfire echoed through the valley as they approached the compound's perimeter. This is reckless, Matthias muttered as they neared the breach point. You would have done the same for my father, Eleanor replied without looking back. They reached the compound wall, where Gideon waited to escort them inside. His tactical gear was splattered with dust and perspiration, but his eyes were alert. Situation? Eleanor asked. Standoff, Gideon replied. Stahl's holed up in a reinforced room with the hostage. Says he'll kill him if we breach. He glanced at Eleanor. Commander wants to know what you're thinking. I'm thinking I need to see who's in that room. Gideon led them through the compound's main building, past subdued security personnel and through corridors showing signs of the recent assault. They found Roland and his team outside a heavy metal door at the end of a basement hallway. Lieutenant, Roland acknowledged. This wasn't the plan. With respect, sir, if that hostage is who we think it might be, I need visual confirmation. Roland studied her for a moment, then nodded. The ventilation access is 2 floors up. Wilhelm is already scouting it. Has Stahl made any demands? Safe passage out, helicopter, the usual. Roland gestured to a tablet showing thermal imagery of the room beyond. 2 heat signatures, one seated, likely restrained, one moving around, presumably Stahl. Eleanor studied the layout. What's our leverage? Limited. He knows we want him alive, which weakens our position. Then we change the equation, Eleanor said. But first, I need to see that hostage. Master Chief Wilhelm was waiting at the ventilation access point, a narrow shaft that disappeared into the ceiling. He'd already removed the grate. It narrows considerably, he explained. I couldn't get more than my head and shoulders in. Eleanor was already removing her tactical vest and equipment belt. I'll fit. The shaft runs straight for about 15 feet, then turns right. The grate overlooking the secure room is another 10 feet from there. It's tight, but should be passable for someone your size. Eleanor nodded, handing her gear to Matthias. Give me 10 minutes. If you hear anything unusual, be ready to breach immediately. Matthias caught her arm. Eleanor, if it is your father in there, I know. I'll stay professional. She approached the shaft opening, gauging its dimensions. With Wilhelm's help, she pulled herself up and into the narrow space. The metal was cool against her skin as she began to move forward, using her elbows and knees to propel herself inch by inch through the confined passage. The ventilation shaft was even tighter than described, forcing Eleanor to control her breathing to avoid feeling trapped. Dust and cobwebs suggested it hadn't been maintained in years. She moved slowly, careful to minimize any sounds that might alert Stahl to her presence. At the turn, she paused to orient herself. The shaft narrowed further, but she pressed on, her body barely fitting through the restricted space. Finally, she saw light ahead, filtering through what must be the great Wilhelm had mentioned. She inched forward until she could see through the metal slats into the room below. The angle was awkward, providing only a partial view. A man stood with his back to her, holding what appeared to be a handgun. Beyond him, another figure sat slumped in a chair. Eleanor shifted position, trying to get a better view of the hostage. The movement caused the metal beneath her to creak slightly. The standing man immediately looked up, raising his weapon toward the sound. She froze, holding her breath. After a moment, he lowered the gun, apparently dismissing the noise. "They won't risk coming in," the man said in accented English. His voice was calm, controlled. "Not while I have you." The seated figure raised his head slightly, though gaunt and showing signs of long captivity. The profile was unmistakable. The same strong jawline Eleanor saw in her mirror every morning. The same eyes, though now sunken and weary. Her father, alive. Eleanor forced herself to remain perfectly still despite the surge of emotion threatening to overwhelm her. 5 years of searching, of doubt, of hope alternating with despair, all crystallizing in this moment of confirmation. She watched as he shifted in the chair, revealing hands bound behind him. "They won't trade for me," her father said, his voice hoarse but steady. "You've miscalculated, Victor." "They want me alive," Stahl replied. "That gives me leverage. You betrayed Operation Nightfall. You've supplied weapons to terrorists for years. They'll sacrifice me to take you down. Perhaps, but I think they'll negotiate when they learn what else I know about Nightfall. About who really gave the orders." This was the confirmation Eleanor needed, both of her father's innocence and of Stahl's value as an intelligence source. She began carefully backing up through the shaft, moving as silently as possible until she reached the turn. From there, she increased her pace, eager to report what she'd learned. When she emerged from the ventilation shaft, Matthias, Wilhelm, and Roland were waiting anxiously. "It's him," she said as Wilhelm helped her down. "My father, alive but weakened." The relief on Matthias's face was palpable. "And Stahl?" Roland asked. "Armed, standing guard. He mentioned knowing who really gave the orders that compromised Nightfall." Roland nodded grimly. "Then we need him alive and talking." "I have an idea," Eleanor said, reaching for her gear. "But I'll need my rifle." 20 minutes later, Eleanor was in position on the building's roof, her rifle assembled and ready. Matthias lay beside her, spotting scope trained on their target. Through a small skylight, they had visual access to a corner of the room below, though not enough to see either Stahl or her father directly. "The angle is tight," Matthias observed, "and without direct line of sight." "I don't need to see him," Eleanor replied, making final adjustments to her scope. "I just need him to hear me." Roland's voice came through her earpiece. "Team is in position. Ready when you are, Lieutenant." Eleanor took a steadying breath. Initiating now. She squeezed the trigger, sending a round through the skylight. The bullet struck the wall exactly where she'd intended, missing Stahl by mere inches, but creating a sharp impact that reverberated through the room. Immediately, Roland's voice came through a loudspeaker set up outside the secure room's door. "That shot missed you by exactly 3 inches, Stahl. The next one won't. You have 10 seconds to release your hostage." There was a moment of silence, then Stahl's voice, tight with controlled fear. "You're bluffing. You can't see me." Eleanor fired again. This time the bullet grazed the table near Stahl's position, sending splinters flying. 5 seconds, Roland continued. "This is impossible," Stahl shouted. "There's no line of sight. Final warning." Eleanor adjusted her aim slightly, prepared to fire a third shot that would pass even closer to Stahl without risking her father. But before she could squeeze the trigger, Stahl's voice came through again, the edge of panic now evident. "Stop. I'm releasing him." Through her earpiece, Eleanor heard the tactical team report movement at the door. Seconds later, the confirmation she'd been waiting for. "Hostage is secure. Target in custody." She lowered her rifle slowly, emotions finally breaking through the professional facade she'd maintained. Matthias placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let's go see your father," he said quietly. In the compound's medical area, Eleanor paused outside the treatment room where her father was being examined. 5 years of searching, of living under an assumed identity, of piecing together fragments of truth while everyone believed him a traitor. Now just a door separated them. She pushed it open. Colonel Alexander Spector Voss lay on a medical bed, and 4 in his arm and monitoring equipment tracking his vital signs. Though thin and bearing the marks of prolonged captivity, his eyes were alert, intelligent. They widened when he saw her. "Eleanor," he whispered, voice breaking. She moved to his side, taking his hand in hers. I found you. They told me what you did. The shot yesterday, the mission today. Pride shone through his exhaustion. My little bird, still hitting impossible targets. I had a good teacher. Better than good, from what I hear. His expression grew serious. You never gave up. I knew you weren't a traitor. Stahl has already started talking, Matthias said from the doorway, naming names including whoever set up Nightfall to fail.
Colonel Vos nodded weakly.
There's a file hidden in our old cabin in Montana, behind the loose stone in the fireplace. Everything I discovered before they captured me. We'll find it, Matthias assured him. For now, you need rest. Later, as Eleanor stood watching the medical evacuation helicopter prepare for departure, Gideon approached her. The SEAL's usual cockiness had been replaced by something more thoughtful. That second shot today, he said, shaking his head. No line of sight, just calculating the ricochet angle through a skylight. That's not possible. Eleanor smiled faintly. My father used to say, impossible is just a matter of perspective. I misjudged you from the first day. Most people did. That was the point. Gideon nodded slowly. Where will you go now? First, wherever they're taking my father. After that, wherever they need someone to hit an impossible target. As the sun set over the mountains, the helicopter lifted off with Colonel Voss secure inside. Eleanor watched it rise, feeling a weight lifting from her shoulders. The mission wasn't over. Not completely. There were still those responsible for the betrayal to bring to justice. But the most important part, proving her father's innocence and finding him alive, had been accomplished. Lieutenant, Commander Roland called from across the landing zone. Transport leaves in 30. We need your debrief before heading back to base. Yes, sir, she replied, turning away from the departing helicopter. As she walked toward the command tent, several of the SEALs nodded respectfully in her direction. No longer the invisible range technician, no longer just the rookie or target girl. They saw her now, truly saw her for who she was and what she could do. She thought about the shot that had started it all. The 3,400-meter challenge that had changed everything. It wasn't showing off that had compelled her to take that shot. It was instinct, the natural expression of who she truly was. In the command tent, the team was already gathered around maps and intelligence reports. Matthias looked up as she entered. We've got a location on one of the conspirators behind Nightfall, he said. Compound in the Hindu Kush, heavily fortified, impossible to approach undetected. Distance? Eleanor asked. Nearest viable shooting position is just over 3,900 m. The team fell silent, all eyes turning to her. Gideon whistled softly. Your father's record, he said. Eleanor smiled, her first genuine smile in years. Not for long.